it's Annie. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. You guys, this feels so weird. I have not filmed a sit-down video in weeks upon weeks, probably going on like 2 months or so now. But yeah, so this is a video that I actually wanted to film before I left for vacation, but then I kind of realized and decided that I was leaving like the next day. This is a very sensitive topic. I wanted to give it a little bit more care and attention that it deserved. So now I'm back from vacation. I've had a lot more time to actually think about this video, actually give it the care and attention it deserved. So in today's video, I'm going to be basically just sitting down here and talking to you guys, having a very open conversation all about what it's like to actually live with generalized anxiety disorder. So just before I left for my vacation, one of you guys actually sent me a screenshot in an Instagram DM where 2 people were having a very public conversation on one of their channels about my anxiety disorder. Basically having given themselves some kind of an expertise and room to comment on somebody else's disorder, as if they were my therapist and had years and years of knowledge about my disorder or disorders as a whole. And oh my goodness, you guys, the misinformation, the inaccuracies, the lies that laid in these comments, I just found it kind of really insulting, and in a lot of ways kind of really just disgusting. So for the sake of this video, I have blurred out and blocked out their names and their pictures on these comments, because this video is not to give them any kind of publicity. This is not some kind of a slander video. This is more of like a informational video, maybe an advice video, but mostly just to share with you guys what it is I live with every single day and what having an actual anxiety disorder is like. And also for the sake of this video, I also posted over on my Instagram story and asked you guys to leave me any and all questions you had about anxiety disorders, specifically GAD and all of that. So some of your questions will also be laced in within everything I'm discussing in this video. So I guess as good a place as any to start is with my actual diagnosis and the backstory of my disorder. So I was diagnosed when I was 14 years old, and I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, better known as GAD. Now there are numerous different categories and types of anxiety disorders, which I will also mention throughout the course of this video, but specifically which one I'm diagnosed with is GAD. And the very best way I can even attempt to clinically explain to you guys what it is to live with GAD in your everyday life, it is basically like living every single day with a persistent worry at the back of your head, which can affect your sleep, getting work done, being productive. It can affect your social life. It just really gets in the way of enjoying your day-to-day life, because it always has these images, these ideas and worries that are planted in your head because of the disorder. So basically imagine if you were to wake up, it's a brand new day, a fresh clean slate, it's a new beginning, and from the very second that you wake up first thing in the morning, you have this nagging feeling, this nagging idea at the back of your head that something bad is going to happen. And then as you go through the course of your day, if you go to school, go to work, meet up with friends, whatever it is you have to do that day, you basically carry around with you that nagging feeling at the back of your head that tells you over and over again something is gonna go wrong. What is it that is going to go wrong? What's gonna happen? When is it gonna happen? What's it gonna look like? That is essentially what it is living every single day with GAD and battling an anxiety disorder. So now as I go on with this video, I'm sure a very valid question some of you guys are asking yourselves, which I would probably ask myself as a viewer, is where is your information and data coming from? So basically everything I'm sharing in this video is coming from a combination of my own diagnosis, my own years and years of therapy, as well as the DSM-5, which is the book that we studied when I was studying psychology in college, which is also the book that therapists and mental health specialists will use to diagnose and treat their patients. So yeah, just a little bit of background on where all this information and data is coming from. So the very first thing that is super important to note is the difference between anxiety and anxiety disorders, which is massive. Anxiety is something that everybody and anybody can experience in their day-to-day life, whether you are super anxious about your upcoming exam or a job interview or something that is heavily weighing in on your mind. However, that anxiety and that one specific thing you are super worried and anxious about is a very isolated and specific thing, and once you are no longer worried about that thing, once it has passed, then it no longer affects your day-to-day life and you're basically back to normal. However, when you are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, like I said before, it is a persistent worry that never really goes away. It's not curable, you can't get rid of it. It is just something that you learn to live with and deal with every single day in your life as it affects every aspect of your life. So now in terms of anxiety disorders, there are basically two different categories. You have your congenital anxiety disorders and you have your acquired. So congenital is what I have, which means it comes to you by way of genetics. So if your parents have it, if your grandparents have it, or an older relative before you, well then you are predisposed for anxiety and you are likely to develop it in your life. Unfortunately, there is no telling at what age it's going to come to you. For me, it was 14. For my mom, it was 18. Some of my friends got it at 16 in their 20s. Unfortunately, there is no way of knowing exactly when it's going to come to you and how it's going to appear. Then in terms of acquired disorders, these are disorders that are not genetic, don't come to you through hereditary or family genes. You are not born with the disorder, you get it later on in your life, usually by way of another mental health disorder such as PTSD or a phobia. So if you suffer from PTSD or you have some kind of a phobia, usually anxiety is paired with that and affects you because of that. Those are more examples of an acquired anxiety disorder versus when it is genetic, that is congenital. So now on to busting the myths and the misinformation in these comments that I shared with you guys earlier on in the video. So let's first begin by busting the very first line in the comment. No, I do not want to have my disorder. No, I do not want to live with it. No, I do not want it to affect my life every day. I don't think anybody wants to have anxiety. Hard as it may be to believe, I do not wish to wake up every morning on edge and worrying constantly. My life would be so much simpler if I didn't have that to worry about every single day. Then as for the second line where it says, she says that there's not much she can do about it. Yes, because like I said before, anxiety is not curable. Telling somebody to cure their anxiety is like saying cure your autism or your Down syndrome. These are all disorders that you are born with and cannot cure or get rid of. So now this is the part of the comments that really had my blood boiling and made me absolutely sick to my stomach. There's even meds if diet and lifestyle changes isn't enough. Essentially, if your anxiety is that bad and there's no other way for you to fix it, just pop a pill and it will magically cure itself. What this person clearly lacks knowledge of, which tells me they have probably never had to take any kind of anxiety pills or any kind of mental, intellectual medication in their lives, is that 9 times out of 10, anxiety medication can actually have side effects worse than your anxiety. And all you really have to do to see any one of these side effects is read the label on the side of the bottle or watch a commercial. Side effects can include things like weight gain, blurry vision, disorientation. Taking medication can cause an addiction to medication or even suicidal thoughts, as they say in the commercials. Which is why taking medication is usually a last-ditch effort that your therapist will encourage, and usually they will encourage you to pursue more like natural types of treatment and coping, such as learning your coping mechanisms, learning your triggers, avoiding your triggers, cognitive therapy, and all sorts of things like that. But no, contrary to this person's belief, anxiety is not going to be cured by diet changes and lifestyle changes, and no, it is not as simple as just popping a pill and curing it. So now, speaking of management and coping, the number one question I got asked the most on my Instagram was all about like, what do anxiety attacks actually look like and feel like? How do you cope with them? How do you deal with them? How do you avoid panic attacks and all that kind of thing? So firstly, what does an attack actually look like? So one thing I learned from my professor in my psych class is that if you've met one person with an anxiety disorder, you've met a single person with an anxiety disorder, meaning that every single person who has a diagnosed anxiety disorder is going to have a different manifestation of symptoms, a different disorder, different triggers, different coping skills. It is totally going to vary person to person. But the very best way that I can describe my attacks is that it is a total shutdown of my body. My body is going to freeze on the spot. I'm going to feel my brain totally shut down. It's going to become almost impossible to breathe. And by the time I'm actually able to breathe, it feels like I've run a marathon. On average, my attacks last about 5 to 6 minutes, but it honestly feels like 6 hours when you're actually going through it. Now, as for how I actually bring myself down from panic and panic attacks, that all depends on what stage I'm at, meaning am I actually having the attack or am I only starting to actually feel my panic coming on? So if I'm actually in the middle of an attack, if it's actually happening at that moment, my favorite method is the grounding method, where basically you start to point out different objects and things you see around you. So if I was having an attack in the middle of my room, I could point out like my TV, my plant, my window, my closet, my clothing, which essentially helps your brain to register where it is you are and what's actually happening in reality outside of your attack. It basically just tells your brain that you're safe, you're okay, and that helps you to kind of get through it and get past it until your body kind of calms down. Then in cases where my attacks haven't actually happened yet, but I'm feeling super like anxious and panicky, I kind of know like, okay, in the next 10 minutes, I'm gonna have an attack. In those cases, I use what my therapist actually calls the happy place method, which basically means you're using your comfort things. You basically identify your favorite movies, TV shows, and music that brings you some kind of a comfort. So sometimes I'll recite my favorite scene from my favorite movie, or I'll sing the lyrics to my favorite song, or sometimes I'll actually go and sit down and watch that favorite scene or a few episodes of my favorite show, and then I sort of feel my anxiety calming down a little bit, the panic kind of wearing off, and then I can go back to whatever it was I actually had to get done. But for sure, 100% coping mechanisms and strategies are different from person to person. Like I said before, no two people have the exact same disorder or triggers or mechanisms. It is different for everybody. And usually 9 times out of 10, your mechanisms make absolutely no sense to anybody else and theirs makes no sense to you. You just basically have to know what works for you and they have to know what works for them. But yeah, you guys, that is basically my GAD diagnosis in a nutshell. That is what my day-to-day, everyday life with GAD looks like. That is how I manage it. That's how I cope with it. That is the best way I can possibly explain it. So yeah, you guys, that is it for this video. I hope you found it somewhat interesting. Maybe you learned something new. As always, thank you all for watching. Love you all to the moon and back, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!